Shalom, Kal Halal, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Hakodash, double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of GMS, including the elders that came before them that taught us the truth. Shalom and salutations to all the brothers up for the word and truth and in sincerity, the hopeful elect tabernacle of David, to the Akwat that are listening and learning and being a pillar of rest, to the 144,001 third, the hopeful elect of Israel. I'm the brother Yahshua. I'm back with the WW3 Daily Update. Shalom and salutations to you as well. This is Joel 3 and 2. I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, or Jehoshaphat. There I will enter into judgment against them concerning my people, my inheritance, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, as they divided up my land. Let's read that in the NLT, I believe. The NLT, it says, I will gather the armies of the world. Okay? What does that mean? World War III. The armies of the world. It's pretty simple, right? I will gather the nations and bring them down in the valley of Jehoshaphat. All right? I will gather all the nations, right? But when you, all right, when you understand that this is talking about World War III, the armies, okay? Not just the nations, their armies, okay? So this is about war. This is what they call the War of Armageddon, or the Battle of Armageddon, which is the last battle, all right? But see this armies of the world, all right? That's what we're watching right now. And if I go to Revelation 19, right? It keeps speaking of the armies of the world. Well, why? Well, the armies of the world right now are all headed toward what they call the Middle East. Let's read this in the KJV, Revelation 19 and 19. Watch how it reads. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies. What do you mean the kings of the earth? All of them. The nations and their armies gathered together to make war. Isn't that what armies do? Okay. Now, this particular war, this is the celestial war, the rider on the white horse, who we know to be Yahushua, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus, right? But that's one thing. Okay. The armies of the earth, right, gathered together to make war is called World War III. All right. So in this particular instance, we have World War III, all the armies fighting against each other, and they stop fighting each other so that they can fight the celestial war. But anyway, the point is that the armies of the world, of the earth, gathered together is called World War III. And back here we have it. I will gather the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is the Middle East. So if we go here to this channel called The Journalist, 16 hours ago, Israel is warned by Egypt. Israel warned Egypt for the last time. Egypt tanks approach border as IDF offensive in Rafah nears. So as you can see, there they are, getting ready to go to war in the Middle East. So let's watch this. I listened to like the first few minutes of it. It was very informative, so we'll see how far we'll go with it before we stop. All right, take it.
Welcome to The Journalist. The Middle East region has turned into a living hell. Iran's plans to attack U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria with its armed proxies. Israel's war with Hamas in Gaza. The tension created by the Houthis in Yemen in the Red Sea. All of these have brought tensions in the region to its peak. Nowadays, striking news about the war between Israel and Hamas, which is seen as one of the most important cornerstones in resolving the crisis in the region, has started to come to the agenda. It was reported that the effects of the war, which reached from the southern Gaza Strip to Egypt's Rafah settlement borders in recent days, caused a great tension in the region today. Regional sources said that Egypt issued a warning to Israel that an IDF attack on Rafah on the Gaza-Egypt border would force Gazan civilians into Egypt, leading to Egypt's withdrawal from the peace treaty it signed with Israel in 1979. Immediately after these warnings, Egypt launched a very remarkable preparatory phase in the Rafah border area. Large numbers of Egyptian troops began pouring into the area. Let's go to the most critical center of the war and discover the full impact of Egypt's preparations on the Israel-Hamas war, the latest developments in the region, and what we can expect in the coming days. We have already mentioned that immediately after Egypt's withdrawal from the peace treaty,
If you're an options trader,
Slovakia. It's pretty thorough, I have to say. I like it.
From the peace treaty it signed with Israel in 1979, there was a great deal of activity in Rafah. The details of this activity became much clearer shortly afterwards today. It was reported that the Egyptian army recently deployed various elements of the 3rd Field Army's 4th Armored Division, consisting of more than 40 M1A1 Abrams and M60A3 Patton main battle tanks, as well as YPR 765 infantry fighting vehicles, to the border with Egypt. The deployment comes ahead of the expansion of Israeli military operations around the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Here, a large part of the population was seeking security, and fears grew in Egypt that Palestinians would be forced out of the enclave en masse. Egypt's deployment is therefore likely to provide extra border security for Israel's eventual ground operation against the southern Gaza Strip and Rafah city, which could result in an influx of Palestinian refugees into Egypt. Following these tense moments in Rafah, it became clear that Egypt's deployment of its army to the border was followed by a move from Israel. The IDF Air Force announced that they were targeting Hamas members in Rafah. Netanyahu's office said in a statement that the army had been ordered to develop a plan to evacuate civilians from Rafah and destroy 4 Hamas battalions it said were stationed there. Netanyahu did not provide details or a timetable for the Israeli attack, but the announcement sparked widespread panic. Following the attack, Netanyahu this week declared that Rafah and Khan Yunis are the last 2 strongholds of Hamas. These statements raised the possibility that Israel might target Rafah again in the future. In the context of these possibilities, Egypt has started to tighten security measures along the borderlines. Since the outbreak of the war between Israel and Hamas, following the deadly attack on October 7th, Egypt had already built a concrete border wall 6 meters deep and covered with barbed wire. Now, with tensions in the region at their peak, security sources report that Egypt is also building embankments at border outposts and increasing surveillance. Meanwhile, Egypt's State Intelligence Service has detailed some of the measures it has taken on its border in response to Israeli allegations that Hamas is smuggling weapons through Egypt. It said that 3 rows of barriers along the border make it possible to smuggle above or below ground. Images shared on social media by the Sinai Foundation for Human Rights, an independent group, appeared to show that the wall was built in December and now has multiple embankments behind it. In later photos, which the group said were taken in early February, it was clear that 3 vertical layers of coiled barbed wire had been laid on top of the wall. Satellite imagery from January and December also showed some new construction along the 13-kilometer border near Rafah and the presence of a wall at its northern end extending to the seaside. Approaching the Rafah crossing with Gaza, the remains of destroyed houses could be seen, as well as kilometers of concrete walls along roads parallel to the sea and near the border. The new measures come after security was beefed up in northern Sinai as the Egyptian army consolidated its grip on the insurgency that escalated a decade ago. Long before the current war in Gaza began, Egypt announced that it had destroyed the tunnels through which smuggling into Gaza had previously flourished and cleared a buffer zone near the border. Now, Egypt stands ready to implement a full-fledged security protocol at Rafah, both with its preventative wall barriers along the border and its military force. But when will Israel's possible attacks on Rafah take place? Important statements came from Israel's highest authorities on this issue. In his most recent statement, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that more than 1 million civilians who have flocked to Rafah in southern Gaza could be evacuated before the Israeli Defense Forces begin operations there. The statement comes at a time when the United States has said that Israel has not done the necessary pre-operation planning to ensure that civilians are not harmed, and that failure to do so risks
Okay, so we're going to stop it right there. Just more war. More war. Okay? And the borders are expanding. Borders of the war are expanding down into Egypt, up into Lebanon. Okay? Pretty soon everybody's going to be involved in the Middle East, just like it says. All right? Just like it says. So, yeah, let's go back here. Let's go here. Yeah, we'll end it right here. Joel 3 and 12. Let the nations be called to arms. Let them march to the valley of Yehoshaphat. There I, the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahshai, will sit to pronounce judgment on them all. All right, so we're just going to, all right. So with that, we hope that the lecture edified you, brothers and sisters. Shalom.